All right. Hey, everybody on YouTube and Facebook. You probably aren't even there yet, but I am Kevin Joseph, and with me is my co-host, my buddy Will Allred, and we have two very special guests. We've got Danny from the Comic Collective in Orlando, and David Pepos, who is the writer of the O.Z, Scouts Honor, and quite a few comics. Guys, thank you very much for coming.
My pleasure.
Thanks for having me, man. And it works. It's funny. It's like Inception because I interviewed David on our show for Scouts Honor. Gosh, that would have been almost a year ago now, maybe like 8 months ago at least.
I'm excited. If it's Inception, isn't it next year that you interviewed him?
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
No, that's Tenet. Inception would be
it's new Nolan movie.
It's a Nolan. Batman Begins? No.
Yes. Here you go.
So what we do first, we mostly talk Kickstarter, but comic creation. We've got a guy who runs a comic shop, so we might just sit here and pepper you, Danny, with every tidbit we can possibly get. But elevator pitch the two comics for anybody who might be hearing about it for the first time. David, why don't you start off with the OZ?
Yeah, the OZ is like, what if the Hurt Locker took place in the Wizard of Oz? It's the story of Dorothy Gale's granddaughter, who's a disillusioned Iraq war veteran who finds herself stranded in the war-torn land of Oz. As she discovers, when her grandmother killed two wicked witches and convinced the Wizard of Oz to leave, and then clicked her heels together 3 times and split, it left Oz in a power vacuum not unlike Baghdad, and left the country in decades of brutal civil war. So now our new Dorothy is going to have to navigate her grandmother's former friends, the Tin Soldier, the Scarecrow, and the Prince of Lions, as she hopes to bring peace to the occupied zone, or as the locals call it, the OZ. So if you're a fan of, if you like Mad Max, if you like Jarhead, if you like the Old Guard or Fables, or Fallout or Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy VII, we're drawing a lot of inspiration from a lot of fun places, and you're really going to dig this book.
That's awesome. Danny, what are you guys doing at the Collective?
So Tales from the Collective Initiative is a anthology. Technically we do 5 creators on there, 5 different stories. 4 of them are from creators some of y'all might know. We have Travis Gibb and Luke Stone on Voodoo Nation's The Ash Can. This is the first time this has ever been done in color, so it's something a little bit special for the fans. Also, The Ash Can was only printed 100 copies. We're going to print way more than that overall. So that's one of the stories. We have David Byrne's Capable, which is on issue 4. It's actually currently on Kickstarter. The story we have is Harry's Day. It's a character that's only seen in the first issue, and our story kind of tells you what he did the day he found out he had superpowers, while his friend Derek did the main story. So that's the second story we have. And then we have 2, I don't want to call them proof of concepts, but they're kind of the first time it's the beginning of these worlds. Riesett Tales from Wendy Gale, which is Chuck Pino's lovely wife. She's got her first comic book there with her very own character and everything. Tyler Carpenter is the artist on that. That's essentially the first appearance of that character and everything like that. That's a world she plans on building with her very own Kickstarter after this. Our 4th story is David Galiano from Mad Cave, Savage Bastards fame, a couple things like that. He gave us Final Growth, which is actually proof of concept. It's something he wanted to get published, or at least like in physical copies, so that he could then shop it around to a few places, including like Aftershock and Vault. So, and then the 5th story is a short story from our very own Megan Danaher, who's one of our employees here. She's a creative writing student out of Full Sail. So hers is a short story, not a necessarily comic book type story, but Chuck actually helped her edit that. And it's the first time it's in physical publishing for her as well.
Oh, that's really cool. So you got Wendy's first, you got your employees first.
Yep, two first writing credits, and then I'm really excited about David's proof of concept with Final Growth because it's something he's really proud of, and I think will open a lot of eyes as well.
How did you bring the creators into that?
So the Collective Initiative is something that we created probably about a year ago now. That was literally what we called self-published small imprint stuff. It was pretty much the Kickstarters that do retailer tiers and that are willing to work with us a little bit is what we did. So we very early on ran into Jonathan and Travis, two amazing guys in everything possible.
Right.
Travis doing Orange Cone and all of the production that he does with all his different Cthulhu Invades Oz and everything, got us together with Chuck and Wendy. And then David Galiano has been a friend of the stores since the first time we met him with Savage Bastards. So it was kind of it was a perfect storm of all these people had these kind of finished products. They didn't have any plans to print them per se. Jonathan was thinking of maybe doing an ash can for Harry's Day. And we kind of thought to ourselves, let's try this. You know, we've never done a Kickstarter. Travis does tons of Kickstarters, and he kind of wanted to take a back seat. He has been our pretty much like project manager on all this, but he's kind of just been that leading hand while we kind of say, hey, we want to try to do this. And then he makes the suggestion. You know, he suggested what our goals should be. He's making the suggestions on stretch goals, which hopefully within the next couple days we should hit, because we were already at, when I last checked, I think we're at 83% funded. So we did break the $1,000 mark already.
Nice. Well, why don't we look at that page? I'm still learning how to do this, so bear with me, gentlemen.
And what's really cool, and I mean, like, yeah, there you go. And, you know, David's done more Kickstarters than I have, obviously. But we have a couple cool tiers in there, including one that's actually gotten a lot of love. I did not think it was going to get so much, which was called the Ultimate Collection. We did 4 covers to begin with already, and then us being a store has done plenty of store-exclusive covers. We decided with some of these bundles, we would go, and that's my favorite right there, the Justice League that you're looking at. It's that Justice League movie poster that was like, you can't save the world alone. I just redid it with our characters, and I was really happy with that. It's an homage. And then this one, we got to finish getting it colored, but that's the Avengers homage. And that building in the background that usually is Avengers Tower, that's actually the eyesore on I-4. That's like literally a really awfully unbuilt landmark like 2 miles from our store. So that's a really cool piece we got to put in there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so and that was Luke Stone that did that cover. So we're really happy to work with a lot of friends on this, because even David Summy did a cover for us. Emily Riesett did it. Peter's daughter, Emily, did a cover for us. So it's like we're really excited to work with a bunch of cool people.
No, that feels fun. And yeah, so that's Jonathan Hedrick's Capable.
Yep.
So that's that piece. What is this piece?
That's David Galiano's Final Growth. Okay. You were introduced to a character called the Jogger in there, and that's pretty much him. You know, he will not be the main character in the main series, but you're introduced to that world through this guy's eyes.
Okay.
And then that is Wendy's first published work right there, O.Z and Tales, The Gem Job. She's got a cool, badass protagonist there. She's like a cross between like Laura Croft and like a badass pirate from Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, I'm just really excited to see her character come to life, because she's been so excited about this for almost like 6 months that we've been putting this project together. And she's been really patient with us, because I know being somebody who's getting your first published work, you're probably ready to see it come out, but she's been really patient with us.
That's really difficult. The waiting is very difficult.
Yeah, and that's Voodoo Nations there in that story in color for the first time. So, but Travis went ahead and got the colorist to work on that right before we launched.
Oh, that's beautiful. Cool. All right, so we've got a $1,250 goal, and you are at 1,071. So you're real close to hitting this.
85% is what the numbers tell me. But yeah, man, I never believed we launched last Wednesday, so just a little over a week. Being new to this, I 100% expected this to be a slow burn, where we would be hitting 1,200 by the 3rd week or something like that. Like we'd be just barely making it. So Travis is optimistic that we could probably get this bad boy funded here in the next couple days, and then we got Travis is real good with his stretch goals. We're definitely going to probably do some stickers and things like that. But depending on what, we might be getting some news from a local outlet here in a couple of days. And if the news is good, we might do a really special stretch goal because it would it would be something commemorative, kind of, to say the least. And I will announce that in the updates once we get that news. That likely next Wednesday, the 25th.
All right, that's exciting. Let's go to the OZ, David. I'm going to do the same thing. And again, bear with me.
Sure.
I'll get there. But go ahead and start while I get to you, and tell me, wherever you want me to go on the page, and we'll let people see this amazing book.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a pretty extensive preview up on the page. We've got the first 11 pages from issue 1, as well as the first 11 pages from issue 2. All 3 planned Kickstarters that we're planning on doing, they're all going to be double-sized at 44 pages a pop, because we want to make sure our readers feel like they're getting a lot of bang for their buck. It's pretty incredible to see how our Kickstarter's been received. We had over 1,250 Yellow Brick Road Warriors last time, and we are creeping up on 650 backers already in our 5th day of running. I think we're over 400% funded, which is just very surreal. We've got tons of rewards for everyone. If you missed our last campaign, don't worry. We've got digital and print catch-up tiers to get you up to speed. That'll get you issues 1 and 2. If you're a collector, we have 4 variant covers for issue 2. We've got a bundled set that'll get you all 4 covers for the price of 3. Or if you missed our last campaign, we've got 9 covers in total for issues 1 and 2. And we've got a bundled set that sells it for, I believe, 9 covers for the price of 7.5, if I remember correctly. And we've also got some really cool exclusive premiere tiers. We've got Skype sessions with me. If you want to have questions about writing a comic or running a Kickstarter or doing comics publicity or navigating Hollywood, you can set the agenda for 90 minutes. We've got original commissions from series artist Ruben Rojas, super talented guy. We've got a couple samples of that further down on the page. We've got getting drawn into the book if you want a special cameo, sort of a background appearance in the book. And then some of my favorite tiers. If you read my breakout series, Spencer and Locke, we've got some handmade Spencer and Locke plushies that we made for my creative team. We've got 2 left. And as well as my most recent book, Scout's Honor, which is about a post-apocalyptic Boy Scout cult. We made a series of merit badges to go out to retailers if they hit a certain minimum order. 7 of those will be released to the direct market. But there was an exclusive to Comics Pro. I believe there was an exclusive to Aftershock staffers. There might be some for cons in the future. There are 14 in total. And so this Kickstarter will be the only place you can get them.
Nice.
Straight out of my personal collection.
Now, are those add-ons or are they a specific tier?
These are a specific tier. We only have 3 available. And one person has already snapped up a set of Ranger Scout merit badges. They did it on the very first day. So there's 2 left. It's very exciting. We're trying to meet our readers where they're at in terms of accessibility, in terms of getting them up to speed, and also matching their budget. And so that's why, anything from, the $5 tier, our thank you tier, you still get a PDF of Spencer and Locke #1 and going to the chapel #1, just as a thank you for supporting our work. $10, you get the PDF, 44 pages of the O.Z, plus Spencer and Locke, plus going to the chapel, plus my script, plus our raw inks, plus our untouched colors. And we just announced today, we just broke our first stretch goal for our digital comics extravaganza. So you're going to be getting another 200 pages of bonus comics from just a murderer's row of up-and-coming independent talent. People like Justin Jordan, Ryland Grant, Clay Adams, Brenton Langell.
We don't speak Clay Adams' name on this show.
Just a real group of talent. And readers, we're trying to make sure they feel like they're getting a lot of bang for their buck. And the best is yet to come. We're going to be announcing some really cool new stretch goals, some really cool social goals, for people who will share and retweet our stuff. We've spent a long time planning, and so we've got some really cool stuff ahead for our Yellow Brick Road Warriors.
Well, I'm terrible at reading. I have a.
Well, that's why we're reading comics.
Yes, I've got 3 piles this high of my to read things. So I was like, the OZ's, the second one's coming out. I gotta find it. So I went through, I found it, and I read it. And I do have to say, the first 2 issues, which is one single thing, it was phenomenal. It is a great start, and I do recommend it highly. I think it's a great takeoff on the Land of Oz. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, do you consider this a spiritual sequel? Do you consider this an adaptation? In your mind, what is the O.Z to the Land of Oz?
Yeah, I consider it as a potential future. I just like with my book Spencer and Locke, I would never think that I would never be conceited enough to say, well, this is definitely a sequel to Calvin and Hobbes. And I feel the same way about the O.Z. If anything, I consider the O.Z kind of a spiritual cousin to Spencer and Locke.
Okay.
Just instead of tackling crime noir with newspaper comic strips, we're doing fantasy and war in the Land of Oz. But it's been fun kind of playing with these archetypes, and I think they're so, everybody knows the Wizard of Oz, even if you've never read the L. Frank Baum books. I mean, I think through the Judy Garland film, it's cultural osmosis. Dorothy, the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the Cowardly Lion. They each have very distinct personalities and looks and emotional arcs, and those are they are super strong archetypes. And when I say super strong, usually that you would think that means rigid, but no, it means that they're actually incredibly flexible, but they don't break. You can do all sorts of remixes to these characters in a way that still feels organic and still feels true to the original source material.
And you've got that what, 40 years, 50 years? How long has it been in Oz? In your head?
Yeah, it's been well, the time kind of moves a little differently. Okay. And that's sort of how we've justified, how has Oz gone so far? How does Oz look this bad, but all these characters are still alive, while the original Dorothy is now an old woman battling dementia? And so it's definitely, we take a few liberties here and there, with the original source material, but sometimes, the rule of cool just kind of, has to prevail. And a
lot of times I'll tell people, because comics.
Yeah, because it's dope. Yeah. Just seeing the ways that we've been able to kind of play around with these characters, the Tin Soldier, for example, as a character who's been destroyed and rebuilt with whatever scrap is around him, being like a real metaphor for people who have been injured and come back, serving overseas. We're going to be introducing the Prince of Lions and Jack Pumpkinhead in this second issue. Now that we've sort of done all of our exposition and establishing Dorothy in the Land of Oz, we really get to put the pedal to the metal and floor it this time. And so the Prince of Lions, he's artist Ruben Rojas's favorite character to draw. He's kind of our ultimate stealth fighter, heavily inspired by Chadwick Boseman's Black Panther. He is somebody who, courage is one thing when you're fighting for yourself. It's a totally different calculus when you're the king of the animal kingdom and you're fighting for an entire country. How does that calculus change? What does the burden of leadership and responsibility entail? And that's something that's going to really make him connect with Dorothy in a big way. As somebody who, she was one of many when she served in Iraq. But by virtue of who her grandmother was, this new Dorothy, she's a symbol. She's a figurehead for a greater resistance. And she's realizing that being a soldier and being a leader aren't always the same thing. They're two very different skill sets with very different levels of responsibility. We get to see Jack Pumpkinhead, who was heavily inspired by the Marvel Comics version of Taskmaster. This blue collar assassin with like a dry sense of humor and just a real knack for killing. He's super fun, and he's going to be a real thorn in Dorothy and company's side throughout this second issue. We see more of the Scarecrow and what twisted him. It's only minor spoilers because you can see it on the Kickstarter page, but he was the one left in charge. He was the critic turned pro, and he couldn't hack it. He's learned that big ideas can't always save you. And so his corruption kind of comes honestly, And then my favorite character, Toto. Toto, got a real scene-stealing moment in our first issue. And, it's sort of my love letter to our puppy, Holly. who passed just before the pandemic started.
Oh,
And,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, I mean, we were very lucky. We had a year with her. She had melanoma, and so we treated her for a year. And it's funny. I wrote Toto scenes right when we got Holly from my parents, and I got the pages in issue 1 of Toto right after she passed, and I rewrote Toto's entire arc that last year. And so he's got a big damn hero moment in issue 2. That might be my favorite, if not my favorite scene in the series. It's certainly one of. And so, it's just fun getting to play with all these characters and these very distinct archetypes. You throw them in a room together, and you see what sparks come out of it. That's why I talk about Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy VII. But you could talk about things like Claremont's X-Men or even the Fantastic Four, where very distinct personalities and very distinct ways of doing things, and you put them in a room together, and magic really does start to happen.
Well, you and Will have both worked with public domain characters.
Mm-hmm.
What do you owe Will and David? What do you owe what exists on the page, and what do you owe to the characters you're writing?
That's a great question. I think ultimately it's respect. I think, it's one of those things that I would never write sort of a gritty reboot of something that I had no affection towards.
Right.
I think it's very easy to do like an edgelord take on something. I always say, you could do Sesame Street meets The Wire, but that's just shock for shock value's sake. There's no emotional engagement. There's no reader investment. Yes, Blake, absolutely. And I think if you show respect to the source material, I think that's ultimately the most important thing. Really, though, I think for me, it's about showing compassion and empathy and respect towards your characters, because ultimately that means that's what you're doing for your readers. I do a lot with hi Charlie. I do a lot with trauma as a theme in my work, and it's dealing with people's real life issues. Whether it's child abuse and mental illness, or it's PTSD coming back from war, and I think showing respect and showing empathy and not treating it as a punchline, I think, is the most important thing to me. Because, like I said, at the end of the day, you're not just treating your characters with respect. You're treating your readership that way. And I think the readers will give you a lot of latitude if they see exactly where your heart is coming from with that.
I think that's true. I think that's true. Just feeling that you care gets you out of a couple things that you do, because they know that you have to do it.
Yeah.
To get to the other side. I think that's true.
It's a matter of establishing trust. Really.
And then actually being on the retailer side of this, customers know when they're being talked down to or written down to. This wouldn't be. Customers know when they're being pandered to and things like that. So you're finding more and more now, like, while everybody wants the books to be inclusive and this and that, nobody wants to be talked down to either. And you're finding that perfect middle ground on all of that. And the really good writers are excelling at it. And then the people that kind of, just want to get a book out there with this topic, they might not succeed as much, but it's true. Readers realize that when whether they're being written down to or talked down to or whatnot.
Absolutely. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kevin.
No, please, Will, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. It's part of what I do. Appropriation, I guess. I don't know. What I try to take from, like the first issue, we had a crossover with War of the Worlds. So I don't feel like I was as successful as I wanted to be with that, because my aim is to do a couple of things. One is to show what's cool about the work, and then also maybe look at the things that are possibly problematic with it. And in the first issue, I wasn't able to. There was so much world building. I don't feel like I succeeded as much with that. But in the second issue, which is being lettered right now, yay. Yeah, I wanted to kind of take a look, because we're doing Dracula, the brides of Dracula, and you have Victorian attitudes toward women and all of this weird Victorian obsession with all kinds of goofy things that they had going on. But showing that, this book is important for a reason. These characters are important, and maybe there's other things bundled up in there that maybe aren't so great. But also then this is falling back to me being, enjoying my tea time teaching, is I throw an essay in there that just situates, hey, this is the work, this is when it was published, this is who it was, this is what it's about, and these are some of the themes and things in it, so that if somebody comes to this and says, oh, I've never read Dracula, but I know about it, what's it about? Where can I go get it? Project Gutenberg, by the way. Anyway, you can go. They can go find out more, for themselves. But you're right. Respect is kind of You're both right. Respect is kind of the glue there. Respect for the characters, respect for your readers, and respect for, everything.
I want to interject. You said the word reject and the word letterer. I mean, respect, not reject. we don't talk about rejections on this show. Can you tell I sent off a pitch this week? Respect and letterer. So, David, you want to give some respect to the greatest letterer in indie comics?
Yeah, DC Hopkins. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
I would even go so far as to say he's the most gracious person in comics I've ever met. And I'm friends with Charlie Stickney. Like, I mean, it's a high bar to clear. Dave Hopkins, I met him at Denver Comic-Con a few years back. We have a mutual acquaintance, Michael Mocchio, who used to freelance for me at Newsarama, and then went on to an illustrious career at Boom Studios and Scholastic, and now he's over at Universal. And he had worked with Dave. And so Dave walked up to my booth at Denver Comic-Con. He's like, oh, hey, we've got a mutual friend. And we just immediately hit it off. Yeah. He is just the sweetest guy. I really can't say enough good things about him. And
he's like the opposite of Clay Adams.
Who's a letterer I've worked with.
I didn't know I was going on an anti-Clay Adams podcast.
He's just so charming and good looking. We got to try to chop him off at the knees.
He's so talented, which is the thing that kills me. And so sweet.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dave is just, for me especially, I need patient letterers to work with. This is sort of my Achilles heel in my process is I have a system of how much I think I'm allowed to fit on a page. I usually say no more than 22 words per balloon. But the thing I always forget is some words are longer than other words. And so, the balloon gets put on the art and I'm like, oh, that's oppressive. That is way too much. And so Dave is such a sweetheart when I'm like, hey, buddy, I got to trim this balloon here. Or, hey, oof. Thankfully, this is more rare, but it's like, oh, that line just does not work. That joke just does not work in context. I gotta tweak it. And he's very patient with me. That he's like, okay, yeah, I try not to rewrite the whole thing, but yeah, I'm not giving in to peer pressure. I love you, but yeah, it's Dave is really they say there's the movie you write, and the movie you shoot, and the movie you edit. And I think for comics, it's the comic you write, the comic you draw, and the comic that's lettered. And so that's why a good letterer is really worth their weight in gold, because they're the guardrails that make sure that your story clicks at the end of the day. Sometimes your artist throw a curveball, and you don't have time to get it redrawn, and so you got to pivot. Right. And sometimes the story you've written, it doesn't 100% work. And the art comes in, and you got to be like, oh, it's the equivalent of, we got to fix it in post. We got to fix it in lettering. And so, yeah, I mean, working with a real pro like DC Hopkins, he's really the linchpin for a team that I think is really A-list across the board. Ruben Rojas and Whitney Kogar and our murderers row of cover talent. And we're really a nice feedback loop. Every time somebody turns in their part of the pages, it just inspires the rest of us to bring our A game for the next set. And
That's awesome.
It's just been a really fun way to make comics, and really, pound for pound, they're one of the most talented teams I've ever worked with.
Oh, that's cool. So speaking of teams, Danny, what have you learned putting your anthology together that's going to help you either just understand about comics so it can help you sell them, or just like, what has this process been like for you on a learning curve?
So one thing, and it's funny because David just talked about his letterer. Letterers and like the designers. So our guy that's worked most closely with almost all of the stories and the design of the covers has been Jerome Gagon. I hope I'm saying that right. But Jerome is, oh my gosh, this guy is amazing. He literally, so the Justice League homage cover, originally he just did a regular trade dress, and I was just like, it looks good. I said, when I designed the cover, I kind of envisioned to see if we could maybe do You Can't Save the World Alone style in the middle. He's like, let me see what I can do. Came back. Heck, I'm expecting, hours or something. He came back in about 10, 15 minutes with what we're going with. And again, it's like, I feel like letterers and those design guys are kind of the unsung heroes of comics currently, because nobody reads who the letterer on that book is. You know your cover artist, you know your artist, you know your writer. You might know the editor if his name's Chuck Pennell, but like when it comes to letterers, nobody's really talking about them. And I really like, after working with Jerome so closely, like, yeah, he even made it look like a movie thing where it says featuring and everything. So like, after working with Jerome with that, I kind of was like, wow, this guy's, he pretty much made the project live up to the hype that I was hoping, because, comic books are the one piece of media, I think, where you are kind of judging a book by its cover. It's inevitable. We design them for that purpose, right? We make covers so they look cool. But yeah, so the one thing I realized is give lots of appreciation to your editor. Make sure your editor is appreciated and feels happy, because editors and letterers, those guys that like are unsung heroes.
Yeah.
Second, I also realized takes a lot of what would the word be? I don't even want to say edits, but like passovers, like we send a cover over to do colors, and the colors come back, and and then it's like, hey, can you touch this up? And then after that gets touched up, you might notice something else needs touching up or something like that. And there's a lot of back and forth in a positive way, but it's literally sending files back and forth a lot. And I didn't realize, I knew there was a little bit of that. I didn't realize how important a Dropbox and things like that are, because you're sending really big raw files all the time. So that caught me by surprise.
Just remember that they used to do this via mail or UPS or FedEx back in the day. I mean, I can't even imagine.
No, I can't. I can't. No,
I have to throw something in here real quick. I'm sorry. We're giving some love to letterers. I have to give a lot of love to Brant Fowler, who is an awesome designer and letterer for Crossover Division. So there we go.
Yeah.
We're a little early. I think Letter Appreciation Day is September 1st, but every day is Letter Appreciation Day on this broadcast, because
we're not taking back.
Yeah.
No, it's if you're somebody who's starting, if you're trying to become an indie comic creator, you're going to go to your thing and you're going to think, I got to save money. Okay. Do not save money on the lettering. It is the best buck you can spend to create value for your comic anywhere in the process. It is that $10 to $30 a page, depending, and maybe more, depending on where your letterer is on their journey, will make your book look professional, because people will forgive clunky writing. They'll forgive a panel that just didn't look right. They will not forgive bad lettering.
Absolutely agreed.
And a lot of great letters also will help with production elements.
Yeah. Oh,
which is really critical if, for printing your own stuff. We had like kind of nearly a snafu with the first issue of the OZ. I had given the production work to somebody else, and And when we got a print proof, it didn't look right. And so, I said, Dave, can you take a crack at this? I didn't want to put this in your hands. And he was like, dude, I would have totally done this. And he did it quickly and beautifully. And that's why it's like having the right letterer. Oftentimes they're the most experienced person on your team. And so they're the guardrail to make sure that like the book is literally like printable.
Yeah. That's a really good point, because they're probably doing, a letterer is probably doing 20 to 50 comics, while we as a writer are doing 4 in indies, 8 if you're a pro, and an artist is doing 1 or less than 1.
Yeah. Well, and to talk what you were saying about don't skip out on your letterer. We had some locals, and I won't say their name because they're the nicest people in the world. But this story is just a cautionary tale. It was their first ever comic book. They produced it. They paid for it out of pocket. They didn't even know about Kickstarter. These guys drew it. He said it was like something he'd been working on since high school. They got it done. The art is a little raw. But again, that's the type of thing that can be forgiven if it's written well or everything like that. And I can't even tell you whether it was written well or not, because I couldn't get through it, because they did not letter it. It was just the two of them, the writer artist. They tried to do it themselves. There's no word bubbles throughout the story. And again, this isn't, everybody's got their own style, you know?
Did they Fiona Staples it? Sort
kind of, yeah. Like it almost, it didn't feel like a prose per se, but the way they worded their bubbles was almost like a prose. It just was words on the side, and it takes you out of it, especially if you're used to reading comic books the traditional way. It was tough to get into. And now again, I always make the joke, those guys sold more copies of their book that weekend in our store than Brian Michael Bendis sold Superman that week. But that again is how nice of guys these people were and how passionate they were.
Right.
So I always tell that cautionary tale about the lettering. You got to do it a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think unconsciously readers, they see the lettering, and that's what makes them. That is a big part of what makes a reader think this is of professional quality. I mean, because art is a little more subjective, so there's a little bit of a wider range, and as a writer, we get to cover ourselves by the strength of our creative teams, and so it's the lettering that's like the first thing that people are like, oh, like when it looks wrong, it looks real wrong. And immediately, I think we're so conditioned to reading comics in a certain way that it's just like, oh, like no, I don't want to do this, and you put it away immediately.
Yeah, and a writer should create a flow left to right, up to down, and an artist can fix what the writer did wrong.
Yeah.
Or if the writer and the artist messed it up, the last line of defense is that letterer, and they make it work. Like we might have really messed them over, and they might take them 3 hours to do that page instead of the 45 minutes or I'm so ignorant on lettering. I just send a script to DC and something beautiful comes back. But still they can fix these problems that we give them, and that's why if you don't appreciate your letterer, you should be a novelist.
Yes.
Yeah. Because it goes a long way, and just like David said, it can make that difference between appearing kind of professional and like I really hate this word, but amateurish. You don't want to look amateurish.
If you want to learn how to do your own lettering, there are courses for that. The comics experience has classes on that. The Kubert School has classes on that. You can do it remotely, so you can learn how to do it. You can. I think you need Illustrator to do that. But if you're not willing to put in that kind of work, if you're not willing to be like a John Layman or a Dave Dwanch that letter their own writing, leave it to the professionals. If nothing else, leave that to the professionals, because otherwise you are screwed. And not just from customers, but if you're trying to sell it to a publisher, totally hosing yourself.
But even I think, and I've never had to hand sell books like at a convention. You would know that a little bit better than me. But I know from selling I kind of treat like selling a collective initiative book like selling at a con, because they've never heard potentially this person's name or anything like that. And it's a lot of it, show me. So you open it, and if your lettering's not good and they're not going to open to the first page. They're potentially going to open to right smack dab in the middle. And if something is off, they will potentially walk away, especially at a convention.
They always open it to the third issue in the trade paperback that has the big reveal that you've been working for the 73 pages until then. And you die inside when they do that. But it's the nature.
It is because, like I said, just I don't know a single person, whether it's a single issue or a comic, that when they want to look through art, they go to the first page. It's just instinctual. You kind of find that middle point and you just rip it open.
I am so bad. I hold my arms, do this, because I have to stop myself from reaching out and going, not that one. Why do you go to the end?
Don't skip to the end.
It's funny because when people ask me, Diamond doesn't always do a great job of saying this is like, actually, I think Scout's Honor, it technically didn't say it, but like, it doesn't tell you that it's a mini series sometimes. Like, it won't say of 5. So somebody will get to issue, let's say 5, and say, oh, is this the end? And the only way I can tell if I haven't read the book yet is to flip to that last page and see if it says end or to be continued.
Right.
And some customers, like, I'm flipping to it, I'm trying to do this for their benefit, and they're peeking. They're like, oh, let me, this is the last page, man. What if somebody's dead on this very last page? I can't show you this last page.
That's right.
Well, I mean, speaking of miniseries and stuff, David, you mentioned an issue 3 for the O.Z.
Yeah.
Is that the first miniseries? Is there going to be more?
TBD. I mean, my first concern is just making sure we get this one done, because we're still wrapping up all the artwork for issue 2 right now.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, it's all, the whole series is written. It's been written for a while. That's the easy part of being a writer. There's no physical labor involved. But yeah, it's been planned as 3 Kickstarters for a while. I'd originally written the O.Z as 6 standard size chapters. And when I decided to make the jump to Kickstarter, the very first thing I thought was, well, how do we give readers bang for their buck? And I realized the issues paired together really nicely.
Okay.
And also, I was kind of like, just logistically, I've seen Kickstarters where it's like issue 6, issue 7, and I'm like, did I back issue 4? Like, and so, sometimes I try to just get the whole catch up, but sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know what I've gotten. And so I figured 3 was like a nice even number. Like, well, technically not.
It's very You're a writer, not a mathematician, and that's okay.
Math is tough.
Math is hard. But just like an easy number to everybody knows, did I back the last one or not? And I'm sure by the next one they'll be like, oh, I'm sure I backed 2 of these. And also I figured it would save me a nervous breakdown from having to pick Kickstarters. I was like 3 is a little bit more manageable. And so, yeah, I always write with an idea in my back pocket for a sequel, but, and I think sometimes it's contingent. Like, I would never do more of the O.Z. without this creative team. If Ruben and Whitney and Dave Hopkins were unavailable, then it's not worth pursuing. And some of it is also, I'm working on the 3rd volume of Spencer and Locke right now. It's slow going because we're doing a Garfield-themed serial killer picking off the Peanuts gang. So I have to do homework on 3 different comic strips.
Right.
But, there's part of me.
That's tough work. It's
a lot to juggle.
And he's got merit badges to fulfill. I mean, this guy's doing it all.
It's, I think I have found that sequels, if it's a book I really love, like Spencer and Locke or the O.Z., then it's worth pursuing. But you really have to gauge whether or not it's worth it, because every series, I think you're rolling the dice. You never know what's going to land with people and what might just go wildly off the mark, especially when you're playing around with like flammable stuff like I like to play with. And so, every time you do a sequel, it's like you're playing with increasingly weighted dice. And you're kind of like, oh, is this where they're going to be like, I actually don't want to see any more O.Z. And then I'm like out of the limb where I'm like, oh, well, I got to do a trilogy now. So I weigh it really carefully. And I think for me as a creator, especially a restless creator who's probably got a little ADD going, I like kind of jumping from project to project and genre to genre. And so usually, unless it's like something that I have a really strong idea, like Spencer and Locke 2, where we're going to go full Fables with it. If you ask me to choose between a new book and a sequel, I'd almost lean towards the new stuff, just because like I don't have the sort of the shrinking runway to work within, and it's just the fun of discovery and finding stuff that new readers might enjoy. But never say never. You know, I hope to have a long career ahead of me, and if I do that, I'm sure returning to the well for some of these stories will be inevitable.
But it's nice that you as a creator can control that. I mean, you keep bringing up Fables, which I consider an extremely good series to the point where I stopped caring. And it's not their fault, because they kept making good comics.
Mm-hmm.
But they set up, and I'm not going to give up any spoilers, because I do think the war with the adversary in Fables is, I think, 75 issues. And I think it's great. And then that war ended. And I could not keep my interest in a well-written, extraordinarily well-drawn comic, because I set out to read one story, and it had a period, an explanation point, but it did not have a semicolon to me. So I love that you have the power to not go back to the well if it's not that important to you, and you don't have people going, people are still buying it, so keep making
timing's if the story's not right is really kind of the thing. And if the timing's not right, because it's like, I mean, these books are just as much, you know, the magic of my co-creators as it is me. And so, you know, the OZ doesn't work without Ruben Rojas and Whitney Kogar and DC Hopkins. And so the idea of trying to do it, you know, without, you know, I'd have to consult with them, you know, and be like, hey, how do you feel about XYZ? Spencer and Locke, you know, when we decided to do a sequel, I sat down with Jorge Santiago Jr. and Jason Smith, and I said, listen, if we do a sequel, we need to do at least 2 of them. And I don't want to commit to that unless you 2 are willing to commit to that. And luckily they did.
No, that's awesome.
And so they've been very patient, waiting for me for Spencer and Locke 3. And it's just because I've written 7 books since Spencer and Locke 2. You know, I'm just like, as soon as I'm able to like come up for air, that is next on the agenda. Yeah, you know, it's just.
And I got to read all this Garfield, man. He wrote a bunch of these.
Yes,
There's a lot of Garfield.
there is a lot of Garfield and a lot of Peanuts. If I thought reading 10 years of Calvin and Hobbes was a lot,
Nothing.
it's nothing. It's nothing compared to Garfield and Peanuts.
Yep.
So it's
Especially,
a lot.
I mean, Peanuts, I think almost every month I see an initial order republication of some Schultz Peanuts thing. And I mean, they went on for way longer than my 30-year-old brain assumed.
I think he went on for over 60 years.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to read 60 years of
You got to, David. You've got to.
But I'm gonna read as much as I can to sort of get a good sense of the world.
And I actually love, you know, I love when I hear writers saying, you know, let's just say they're doing their homework. You know? And it's same thing, you know, it's funny because like we're over here listening to David talk about, you know, reading Garfield to do Spencer and Locke 3. And I'm like super happy he's doing that research and everything. And it's like we have freaking Hollywood movie directors that aren't even bothering to read the comic books that they're directing movies about. So like everybody asks for just that bare minimum, and it's so funny. All of us that are working our butts off do it, and then the guys, you know, up there don't do it, and it's just kind of crazy, you know. So
well, you know, I consider myself really fortunate that, you know, I'm not just I'm an indie creator, but I'm also an indie creator who's like super picky. You know, life's too short, I think, to be working on stuff you don't love as a creator. And
there's not enough money in it. You know, I mean, I could work on a screenplay for Hollywood that I didn't care about. I can't work on a comic I don't care about.
exactly that. You know,
I think what I'm saying is, please hire me to write a screenplay for something.
About, huh?
It's just I feel like maybe it's because I came into writing kind of late. I grew up in the Midwest. I had no creative role models whatsoever. My first book got published kind of on accident. Like I thought I was going to be an editor. I thought I was going to be, a development executive or a current programming executive. And the only reason I wrote Spencer and Locke was because I was like, well, if I can show that I can, what's the best way to show that I can break down a story? Maybe it's if I build one. And then I sort of was like, I did a script. That's fun. Let me do an outline. That's fun. Let me get some art together. That's fun. Let me shop it just for funsies. And then somebody said, let's print this. And I was like, oh. But I'm of the opinion, especially because I'm still kind of a slow writer, is that I have a finite number of books in me. And I will be damned if I don't care about them. And so I'm going to go to the mat kicking and screaming every single time to make sure that these books are the best damn books I can put out, given my level of skill set and experience at the time. And that's why I'm like, every single book I've done, everybody asks, will there be more? And, maybe eventually, but, I never want like my babies. I never want Spencer and Locke to feel like a chore.
Right.
And same with the OZ. And so I'd rather leave while we're at the top of our game than stay past our welcome. And it really hurt our reputations down the line.
Right. David, I love that I can play video games, read comics, watch movies, and still call it research and take it off your taxes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the important thing. Let's not forget
have it and get it published.
Yeah.
What I've loved, so like I came from the journalism, like the digital media world. Let's just call that.
Yeah.
My degree is in digital media. And what I found out a lot in that realm, and it could just be my generation too. I was in school with a lot of 20 and 30-year-olds. There was a lot of desire, but there wasn't a lot of follow through.
Mm-hmm.
I could tell you I met, maybe hundreds of people. Oh, I want to be a journalist. Like, it's what I want to do. It's what I want to do. And like, my whole time I was in college, I was doing unpaid internships with the school newspaper, driving myself from Florida to Rhode Island and Detroit, Michigan to cover events out of my own tab. And that was like the follow through, I think. And a lot of the guys were like, well, I can't just do this from my house. Like I can't just type it up. And I'm noticing that a lot of, and maybe it's just the circles I run in, with Kevin and Travis Gibb and everybody, but it's like, there's a lot of follow through in this community, at least. And that's what I think Kickstarter goes to show you, all these great projects. And if you do some terrible digging, you'll find some awful projects on Kickstarter too. But like, it's clear that there's a lot of people with their head on their shoulders, right?
Don't say tart. Don't say tart. Don't say tart.
But no, it's like there's a lot of guys with their heads on their shoulders that are doing the follow through. They're doing the work. And I think a lot of people like to support. Obviously, your guys' products are good, but I think people like to support just the fact that somebody's chasing their dream.
Well, I think also Kickstarter really cultivates those excellent qualities that you were talking about, because I think there is a knowledge gap for people who want to work in the comics industry, who want to be published, and what their expectations are for that. I feel like there are a lot of people, and I saw it, in the trenches at Action Lab when I got my start there, where I think a lot of people were expecting, I'm going to write the script and I'm going to sell the script and that's done. And, I'm going to get my page rate up front and I'm going to keep my rights and we're going to turn it into a movie and I'm going to get rich off of it. And it's like, no, that's not how any of this works. Especially in the indie scene, you got to be wearing a whole bunch of hats. You really you cannot expect anyone to hold your hand, even at a major publisher. They are short-staffed and overworked and have more books than just yours. No one is going to love your book and take care of your book the way that you, the creator, will. And I think especially when it comes to the aspiring creators, and I mean, I hear this all the time in LA. I before the pandemic, at least once a month, somebody was hitting me up being like, "Hey, I've got a script and I want to turn it into a comic. And how do I do that?" And usually when you say, well, do you have $15,000 and 9 months to do it? That's when they go pale. And they're like, but I thought the publisher would pay for all that. And I'm like, not if you want to keep your rights. but also you still need, like, you can't just walk in the door for a publisher like Boom or Aftershock, who are going to pay you a page rate. Like, you have to make comics, or be a very, very successful screenwriter, in which case you probably don't need to be making comics to get your script made. and so I think there is the Kickstarter community, I think is really one of a kind, because you have to do your own printing. You have to do your own fulfillment. And if you don't deliver the goods, people are going to be pissed, and they are going to let you know about it. I just raised international shipping costs to actually match what the market is. And I got people complaining about that. Like, imagine if you don't actually deliver the book.
Well, exactly. So we have, and again, I'm not going to name any names, but there's a guy locally here who publishes his own books through Diamond currently. But from my understanding, he's banned from Kickstarter for having too many unfulfilled projects. And while there are still the people that buy his books through Diamond because they don't know nothing better, from his Kickstarter days, I do have people that tell me, like, that guy, no, I don't pick up his books anymore because he didn't fulfill his Kickstarters. So it's like, it goes a long way, obviously within the Kickstarter community especially, but it even will affect you sometimes if you think you left that behind, and that reputation will follow you.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, it comes down to the fact of, I back a lot of projects because I know what it feels like when someone else backs me.
Yeah,
I really honestly know the extraordinary feeling of having dozens when we started, and then breaking 100. Like 100 people. I go to a comic and work a comic convention. You work 12 hours a day, 4 days in a row, and you've sent a dozen books home with someone, and that's a good convention.
Yeah.
And then you do a Kickstarter and it's like 100, 200, whatever, and that extraordinary feeling. And so now I've got the other dopamine high of being like, wait, Danny from the Collective, who a month ago found out I was going to be in town and said, yes, stop by, and literally put out a table so my daughter and I could sit there and sell comics at his shop. Like, he's got a Kickstarter. God damn right, I'm going to be there. I think I was like second or third on your list.
I think so.
David, I was like 70th.
He was second, and you're actually right behind Travis Gibb, who naturally was gonna be first.
He must have hit launch, and then you know what? I think I get the gold medal on that one. I don't think that's
you get the number one pin. We'll just make you a pin that's like number one. I love what David Galiano just said. He's like, I love how Danny writes one page in an anthology, and now he's a comics expert. Travis let me write that one page in Cthulhu, and I'm still super. He actually is letting me write a backup story in Voodoo Nations 3. He started by giving me a page, and he said, if you want to go as big as 3 pages, that's fine. And he's going to cover my artist for me. So
3 pages is going to let you do an even numbered page story?
yeah, an even numbered story. And 9 panels each page, so nothing but even numbers across the board.
Well, and David made a good point. It's about making comics, and starting out, maybe you can't make a 4-issue 100-page epic about whatever, so do a 5-pager, do an 8-pager, find an artist, find a team, and make it. And there are, speaking of anthologies, whoops, you're over on that side. Okay. Speaking of anthologies, there are anthologies out there that are always looking for stuff. I'm going to bring up Clay Adams because Nightmare Theater was a monster anthology. It was just a massive campaign, and that's. Kickstarter is just kind of. It's kind of wired for anthologies. I think it's
wired for collaborative efforts. I feel like.
Yeah, and it's also built, I think, for crazy people like Kevin, who's going to do 25 issues of a series on Kickstarter, and I'm planning on 20. What's wrong with us, Kevin?
so much, but we do not have time for what's wrong with Will and I.
But we do have time for what's wrong with you guys.
Yes. It is midnight. We've got some people. Oh, Blake says anthologies are huge right now, and they really are.
And it's kind of cool because so our first one, we got really lucky. Like I said, a lot of these guys are established. Even David, who's giving us a proof of concept, he's written for freaking Mad Cave, you know?
Yeah.
But we're hoping that with volume 2 of this, now that we're established, we might have a few backers that are following us. We're actually hoping to give people a little bit more of a chance. A local guy here by the name of CJ Lab, he has a Kickstarter for a book called Barren, Barren. He's only on issue 2. He's only written 2 issues. Well, he's got about 3 or 4 issues done. But we're going to go ahead and give him a chance to do an ash can in our book, something he's never written before. So it's like, again, hoping to grow his audience. Rog Mahan, who does Mojo Risen, he's willing to give us a ash can style story that's never been published. So it's like a lot of these collaboratives that maybe the first time we worked with almost everybody that we worked on. The second time around, we're hoping to work with people that we haven't worked with before. And then hopefully by the third one, we mix and match, you know, and we start working that way. But we're really excited. And, you know, obviously we're not going to get to work with everybody we want to work with. Like we'd love to work with David Byrne. And that is our friend CJ Lab, Barren 1 and 2. He's getting it caught up and he's still got 10 days to go. But CJ is a great guy. He's actually been in our store multiple times. Barren is about a chemist who, it's like Batman, but if Batman, instead of everything on his tool belt, was made in a chemistry lab, and so he like breaks into doors using things like that, and it's awesome book. I can't suggest it enough.
Well, apparently a cousin of mine does either the lettering or the coloring, so I'm in. This is a explain yourself first. We're gonna have a Kevin backing in the middle of the show.
And I'm glad I could bring CJ a little up, because that's really what it's all about. Like, while the creators are kind of pushing some of their fans to us for the Kickstarter, a lot of it is us hoping to be able to help out the little guys like CJ. And like, I mean, one of the artists that we're going to have in our store tomorrow is a 16-year-old kid that just showed me his portfolio one day, and I was just amazed. So, you know, I like to hey, we back to it. There we go. But yeah, I like to support the little guys. I mean, that's what I've always done. I've always loved underdogs in sports. I'm a DC fan. When Marvel's at its peak, I'm reading DC for whatever reason and everything like that.
That's funny.
Well, you know, that's the great thing about Kickstarters. The indie comics community is so supportive and helpful in general, but then the Kickstarter comics community is super supportive. I mean, it's just it's wonderful how helpful and supportive the entire community is to, you know, whether this is your first launch or whether it's your 10th launch. It's just so great.
Yeah. And that's, you know, this first launch has been awesome. We hope we can keep the steam onto, like, you know, our second one. And obviously, so our owner, Brendan, who some people from Central Florida might know him from the Coliseum of Comics days, he co-owned that with his brother. He's been trying to write a comic book for probably 20 years and never, you know, being a comic shop owner, I think a lot of people think that they're ready to write a comic book. But now that we have what we call the Collective Press, that's what we call the company that's printing these. He's kind of ready. He's like, I think I'm going to pay an artist and we'll just see where it goes. Because with at least the Kickstarter backing, I mean, it's not as crazy to think that he can do it, right? It's still a little crazy, but it's not as crazy.
I can only imagine, you know, I know this was the case for me. You know, I worked as a comics journalist for over a decade. And I always say, you know, I wrote reviews, you know, I knew the lay of the land. I was editing everybody else's reviews as the reviews editor at Newsarama. And when I wrote my first book and I put my first book together, all that knowledge and interning at DC Comics, working in editorial, it was barely enough to get me over the finish line. Like, I think there's so much that you can pick up in theory, but it's all academic until you put it into practice. And boy, there's nothing that teaches you more than doing it. And that's why every time somebody asks, like, how do you get into comics? It's always like a crappy answer, and I hate saying it, but it's
pay me.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, that's not the answer. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
That's the answer I give, and it's pretty crappy. But
I will say, I mean, I'm a big believer. You know, writing short comic scripts, you don't have to publish them. You just got to get your reps in. I did a short script every day for 90 days when I was a journalist, and There are a lot of crappy scripts. A lot of them won't see the light of day, but even like one of them wound up being my submission for the Big Hype anthology for Roxy Rewind. That was one of my 90-day 6-page scripts, and I think you learn the most by finishing. And then you look back and you're like, well, here's where it sucks. And as long as you do it short, then you don't really, you're just like, well, it's an idea. And ideas ultimately are a dime a dozen. Anybody can come up with an idea. Any idiot can do that. It's, can you execute? Can you follow through? And can you get it done? And doing a short every day for me, it just made me realize, like, oh, if an idea, if somebody beats me to the punch, that's okay. I'll make up another idea. That's the job, is making ideas and then like really making them into something.
And that understanding that even if they beat you to it,
you can still do your own twist.
Yeah, the concept is close. Still do your story.
One of the things David said earlier, like a little bit earlier, but I thought was like perfect, was how he talked about how, first of all, he got into comics because he's like, how can I prove I could be at this level? Oh, I write a comic and then I learned to edit it, this and that. I had two things that one of my old professors when I was doing journalism said to me that have stuck with me forever. One of them was know a little bit about everything. This is a spiel per se, but know a little bit about everything. Know a little bit about everything, know most about most things, and then know everything about one thing. And I feel like that kind of goes to what David was trying to do. He knew a lot about like comic books because he had done the reviews in journalism, but now he's like, oh, I'm going to teach myself some lettering, or I'm going to teach myself some editing. And that led to where he's at now. And I think that should be kind of a lesson. I mean, obviously it's not the blueprint, but it should be a lesson to people.
Well, and I love what you said about, doing it and then, that was barely enough. What's the old Mike? Is it a Mike Tyson quote? Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah. That's comics.
That's comics.
So, guys, I got to finish setting up for Free Comic Book Day. Actually,
Absolutely.
while I'm still here and I have the laptop, I can kind of.
Yes.
Wow, looking beautiful.
Comics.
Go through all of our kids' books, and then.
Do you have a white ash?
Oh, of course. I was about to pull that out. It's actually at David Byrne's table because David's going to be a guest tomorrow.
Oh, nice.
So I've got.
Yeah, I think
so. Can you have David Byrne just graffiti all of the white ash just to make Charlie cringe?
Of course. Well, I mean, he's got the backup story in there. We even have Steak Jessamy stickers, man. We're ready.
Nice.
We're ready. But yeah, man, we've got like. I'm excited. We're doing it late, but like that's everything we've got right there, and we're gonna have. I've got 4 tables set up for artists that are going to be doing sketches. Well, David's not an artist, but we're going to have an artist doing sketches. So I'm excited, man. But yeah, I'm going to get out here and finish setting up because I got to be back in at 9.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking part.
Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Guys. Thank you for having me. And David, thank you for sharing your wisdom, dude. It was nice to be on with somebody much more experienced than me.
It's my pleasure to catch up. And I'm excited to be one of your backers as well.
Yeah, thank you. I saw that. So first of all, I want to say thank you before I get out of here. I think we got like 3 or 4 backers during this, so I really want to say thank you to everybody. So yeah, this has been awesome. How many Voodoo Nations are we giving out? We actually do still have our store exclusive. I'm going to be giving out a lot of freebies. Like and we'll be giving some out to people on Facebook. So if anybody can't make it out here, follow us on Facebook. We're going to do at least 2 live videos with raffles. So check it out. And definitely, I was looking earlier. We were talking Kickstarter stuff, but David's trade paperback for Scout's Honor comes out September 22nd. Make sure you go to your LCS and you pre-order that because I know we're having a ton of copies. So make sure you guys do that.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
No problem, guys. Hey, we appreciate y'all. Take it easy, Tart Man. Take it easy, Will. Take it easy, David.
Have a good night, man.
Good
All right,
night.
Danny. Take care, buddy.
You too, guys.
So, David, I'm going to ask: Are you ready to close up shop? I know you've got what people call a life.
I am just honestly just purely exhausted. I'm very excited to be chatting with you guys, but this is my 12th podcast this week. So I'm gonna sleep.
I think
send
that
another update to all the Kickstarter backers, and I do this every night because I don't want it to snowball. But I send thank you notes to every backer every night. So I'm like, okay,
Same here.
those are the things I got to do in the next like 2 hours. But fellas, it was so great hanging out with you guys, and please let's do this again sooner rather than later. And if there's anything I can do to return the favor in terms of promoting your work, please don't hesitate to ask. And for everybody watching, thank you so much for listening, for giving the OZ a shot. I promise you, it's one of the best books that I've ever been involved in. You can visit bit.ly/the OZ comic, and it'll take you right to our Kickstarter page. And yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. It was my honor.
it was a pleasure, and I will say again, read issues 1 and 2, guys. I promise you, it's a great comic book. That's all there is to it. It's a great comic book.
Well, have a great rest of your night, guys, and we'll talk again soon.
You did.
All right.
Thanks.
Will, you wanna stay on, and we'll talk about Capable and Jessamy real quick, because our buddies
Sure.
are still running, and then we'll close it out. One last. Can you share the link for David's book? Absolutely. David's book was the OZ.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty certain that if you look up David Papos, it'll come up. It's one of 2 he's created, so it'll come up pretty easy. But the OZ, or Kickstarter projects, the OZ comics / the -OZ-2.
That's something else that Kickstarter does. It allows you to follow, people that have backed your books or books that you've backed, those creators. It's pretty darn awesome.
Yeah.
They make it easy.
All right. So David found it. All right. So let's go to
Capable numbers 1 through 4, right?
2. Sure. Give me 2 seconds. I got to get that open. Vamp, Will, vamp.
Vamp. Okay. You're probably wondering why I've called you all here today. That never gets old.
Never.
I've got some pretty good dad jokes, maybe. I don't know. I love dad jokes because, dad, but
yeah,
I don't know how the rest of the people like them. So,
All right.
He is nearly funded. Very close.
2,665 of a $3,000 goal with 6 days. This
Almost
is going
90%.
to happen.
Yep, definitely going to happen.
So if you're watching this and you're new to Kickstarter, there is something really insane about the math of Kickstarter. If you reach 50% of your funding, you make it like 90% of the time. So once Jonathan hit 1,500, he was safe, but it is right there. So if you want to check out a really cool comic, basically people with disabilities develop powers that are the opposite of the disability that they were afflicted with. The lead character was in a wheelchair, and when whatever the phenomenon is, and full disclosure, I haven't read it yet. I back to get all 4 issues so I can read it when I get the books, but he gets super speed from it. Jonathan, great dude. He was on our show about 3 weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. I don't know. Time has no meaning anymore for me.
Not in Pandemica. It does not.
No. But I have read the first couple issues of the Recount, and Jonathan just is a fabulous writer, and I just trust him. So if you can pop on Capable, I do not think you're going to be disappointed. And then I will get Jessamy up.
And I am going to check out and see what else I've got on the...
What you've backed?
Yeah, I'm thinking we've... let's see. Tales from the Collective, Capable, Stake. Yeah, actually, those are the 4 that I have. Those are my active ones right now.
Okay.
So yeah.
Awesome, David. I'm glad that you've got to read it. I actually Blake read #1 and loved it. That's awesome. All right. So then Jessamy, if I could do this faster, I would be much happier with myself. But I don't think that's going to happen. So and
we'll get there.
David Byrne, who we talked about, has Stake Presents Jessamy, which is sort of a prequel to his vampire title Stake. Stake happens in present time, but Jessamy is a I've read the first issue a while back. I would say it's a vampire
18th
colonial
century?
America.
Yeah.
A vampire whose job it is to make sure that humans don't know that vampires exist, starts hearing rumors of an outbreak that might mess up that quiet solitude for vampires in colonial America. So really cool artwork, awesome covers.
Yeah, David and Charlie Stickney, man, they find the artists.
They know a couple people. They know a couple people. That this one. Just, I mean, that's hard to beat, that variant.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right, we should check out Freak Show Kingdom coming from Second Sight. Oh, congratulations!
Awesome.
That's cool. We will definitely, when it comes out, check that out, David. All right, I think that's it. We can close it up. Will, thank you as always for being here, hanging out.
Yeah, love to, man.
More than that, because he's stuck. You know, like I don't exactly know where he lives, but Arkansas isn't that big.
That's true.
Driver on the stage screaming, "Will!"
You might run into Clay Adams though, because we're pretty much neighbors. So
Blake, Charlie, David, everybody who commented, and Peter, even if you didn't comment, if you watched, we really appreciate it. So we'll try to be back here 11 p.m. Eastern time next week, 8 p.m. Pacific, and hopefully we'll have somebody as cool as Danny and David to talk comics. Good night, everybody.
Good night.